Hey, how's it going, everybody? We're doing something new tonight, something that I've been planning on doing for quite a while, and we're gonna call this one El Billullo, which is Colombian slang for money. And so this stream is gonna focus a lot more on economics and what's in the financial and economic developments that are going on around the world. Obviously, we have the money man out here, H
Big
Money.
Money Henry, H Money Henry, not Henny drinking Henry. Big moves for me.
Hey,
Um,
and as always, we got the homie music only account. What's up? He's so loyal. He's always like the one of the first guys commenting. I love that homie. But yeah, sorry Henry, I cut you off. What you were saying?
I was gonna say, ring the bell, subscribe, and music only account is always there. but yeah, we're here. So we've been told from a lot of our listeners that they're interested that they suggested to us um, that Klaus and I should focus on topics of economics and finance. And um, being that Klaus, for the normies, would you say that you're a libertarian if a normie was to ask you, or that you're generally in favor of a free market?
I would certainly say that I veer more towards the free market. And a lot of people would say that, oh, it's because, you just a nerd that reads a lot of books and you don't know about real life and that type of thing. But as a Colombian, I can certainly tell you we need less government restrictions on a lot of things. It's actually something that I'm going to get into after you, because apparently they're trying to slap Colombian consumers with a sort of tax if they buy on Amazon. And it's just taxes all around, bro, and it's just a nightmare out here. So I'm not quote unquote libertarian because I'm a free market or whatever. It's because I actually live the economic reality of what it is to start a business in Colombia and try to work in Colombia, save in Colombia. And it's just a nightmare, bro. It's very statist, very controlled, uh,
Yep.
very
And many
nonsensical.
and many of the countries that we come from, and our listener comes come our audience are listening are from Latin America, and we all have some sort of bureaucracy or some state control that's there that doesn't really allow Latin America to make economic progress. It's sporadic in the way that you have the pendulum swing, extreme left, extreme right.
Hmm.
And to varying degrees, our countries have dealt with that. And we're just here to talk about more of the clear pill here. What are actually some things that some countries are doing, and how are we going to address, well, rather just dissect things like some articles or what's going on in the crypto market and the trading market and the economic finance sphere or business sphere and et cetera, et cetera. I've always been really interested in this. As growing up, I always had that entrepreneurial spirit that say my dad had. For instance, he was the one that pretty much inspired me to have a sense of work ethic. And it wasn't a job I wanted, but it was rather that a job is a job is a job. And from there, you go on to manage your money and pay your bills and pay your phone bill and have some sense of this, dignity and worth in this world, because you're not no one in this world without a job. I just hate to say it. Well, that's what I was told, and that's the worldview I hold. So yeah, Puerto Rican Rum says he is libertarian leaning as well, which causes rift with my brother, who is a full-on Marxist. Yeah, I mean, when especially Klaus, you mentioned in earlier streams that in Colombia you have a variety of families who are on the complete side of the political spectrum, and that's interesting. And Puerto Rican Rum, you're not the only one. I think my brother is like a Marxist, actually.
Niggas just hate money, bro. That's what happens.
Yeah, it's weird because he's an artist. He should love to sell his paintings, but he doesn't. So, without further ado, um, you have anything close to
No, go right ahead. The floor is yours.
Cool. So I no, this morning I was going through my morning news. I'm the type of person that cultivates their news on Twitter. I like to, make my own echo chamber, and I go from there. But most of what I follow on Twitter is business finance related. Shout out to at Zero Hedge and Financial Times and Bloomberg and all the small money, big money markets, whatever it is. And one of the articles I came across that try to share on the screen here is markets. Ecuador defaulted. Basically, the title of the article is Ecuador defaulted last year. Now its bonds are worth less. So, fairly recently, Ecuador had an election where they went from not Correa, but they were on the left side of the political spectrum. They were known for being a part of the Sao Paulo Foro, and let me pull it up now. I'm sharing it. Let me see if you see it on the screen, Klaus. And basically, I was actually really intrigued with this article because this is, what we're basically getting here is that in a nutshell, good economic policies could put you can put you in the right direction, or rather, can put your country in the right direction for the future. And basically, what this article covers is that, well, sovereign notes have returned 28% this year, most in the world. Ecuador is a bit of an island in the region, and Ecuador was dollarized because they went through I think it was in 2002. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they dollarized, and basically they've been dealing with a crisis. But moreover, wages have been stagnant. Of course, they had Rafael Correa as president, who was leftist, close friends with Hugo Chavez, and they haven't really made much progress till very recently, where the leader of Ecuador now is Guillermo Lasso, who was a former banker at I think he was a part of the bulge bracket banks. I have to check again, but he was a part of one of the big names, and he won the election against. I think one of the candidates was the indigenous movement candidate, and the other one was just your standard leftist South American politician. And over the past month, Guillermo Lasso was able to reform the minimum wage and cut extensively on taxes. I know, Klaus, you shared a tweet with me about it was about the tax cuts that Guillermo Lasso put forth. But nonetheless, this article states, so the returns on the nation's bonds have topped 28% this year, more than any other country, according to Bloomberg Barclay Index. It's the result of a confluence of factors: A steady vaccination campaign; B, rising oil prices; and optimism that the April election victory of President Guillermo Lasso, a former banker, will usher a wave of friendly market reforms. The gains stand in contrast to the experience of investors in other Latin American countries that have seen political unrest or the rise of left-wing parties. Amid the economic toll of the pandemic, neighboring Colombia this year was rocky by bloody protests over the president's ill-fated tax hike plans. Klaus, I know you. If what are Colombia's tax hike plans?
Uh, so, yeah, so they're mostly correct, but the wording is a little bit wrong. It was more of a budget reform because in 2020 there were these lockdowns, right? And these lockdowns necessitated some form of social assistance to those who needed it. And by the start of the financial year 2021, the the finance minister told the president, "Well, there's a lot of we have all these social programs, and we kind of killed businesses left and right last year, so we're gonna have to raise taxes in order to be able to fund all these social programs that we have." And so it was a very tough decision that the president had to make, and I can understand his position because it was a couple of things that a couple of choices he had. So either he had the option to raise taxes, which that's what he went with. He had
Hmm.
the option to eliminate social programs or reduce them, which was going to lead to riots anyway. Or he could have stayed the course and not do anything, which was only going to basically he was going to kick the can down the road, and that was going to end up in riots as well. So all roads led to riots. And so what he decided to do was to raise taxes. Now, my personal opinion on the matter is that he should have reduced taxes. He should have reduced all this sort of onerous regulations and paperwork that you have to do in order to start a business. Encourage small business owners to I guess revive their businesses and that type of thing, and just go really hard on the rioters, because there was going to be peaceful protests and riots as well. Obviously, we live in a democracy, so you have to understand that the opposition will have a right to protest whatever the government and
But
the current government is proposing.
you mentioned very interesting. But I didn't get to ask you. What do you mean by this Amazon tax that Colombia has? Is it a thing where it's like a state tax? Like here in the United States, if I was to get something from Amazon shipped to let's say a address in New Jersey versus New York, there's less of a sales tax. So it's, let's say for instance it's a $200 item Amazon shipped out, and New York they'll probably charge me of $40 in tax. And if I was to ship it out, let's say to a friend's house in Jersey, and then just go drive and pick it up there because it'll be cheaper, it'll probably be $9 or $8 in the state sales tax. Uh, but basically, what I'm asking is, does Colombia have a something of that nature, or is it different?
Well, no. As far as my experience has been with services like Mercado Libre, there doesn't appear to be any tax, at least when you start buying. Maybe the value added tax is already, like, it's already in the product's price already. So say for example,
Facts.
if something costs 20,000 pesos, they're not going to put then VAT extra 2,500.
Hmm.
The tax will already be in the price. So the only thing you have to pay is shipping costs, because I think Mercado Libre doesn't have something like Amazon Prime, where you buy Prime and the price is as is, 20,000 pesos, 20,000 pesos. No, they don't have anything like that.
Copy.
So you pay 20,000 plus 8,000 of shipping. So obviously it depends on your location, that type of thing. So former president of
Got it.
Colombia and current head of the Centro Democrático Party, which is the current ruling party, said, and this is what he proposed. It says imports by digital mail do not pay VAT up to $200 per person per year. This year, they can cost $900 million. They stop paying VAT for approximately 650 billion pesos. In 2023, they would exceed $2 billion with a VAT loss close to 1.5 billion pesos. So, what that means is that if you buy something on Amazon, and this might apply to other
Hmm.
e-commerce sites as well, anything that is above $200 is getting taxed. Now, the rationale that the government stated in order to apply this tax was that, oh, it's mostly rich people who will buy things above $200. So in reality, we're really just taxing the rich, and we're trying to equal the playing field, and all these sort of rationales for increasing taxes. But of course, there are people in Colombia who are not rich and who would like to buy things on Amazon, and they might have to, their what do you call it? Their checkout thing might exceed $200, so now they're getting taxed on that. And this
Right.
obviously hurts. This specifically hurts a lot of small business owners. So, for example, I'm here in the U.S. and I have a business associate in Colombia who's starting a small business, and so we see that there's a lot of things that he can't buy locally. So I'm gonna have to get that shipped through Amazon. So I'll buy it over here and I'll ship it over there. He'll receive it or whatever. Well, now it kind of like a small business tax, because small business expenses are not as big as big business expenses. So I might have a bill of $700 and so I'm now getting taxed for that, for simply trying to build my
So
business, getting the required
what
instruments.
the so it sounds like what they're saying is kind of like what American leftists say when they say that, or left-leaning economists say when they say, well, we denounce tax cuts because they go to the rich, and trickle-down economics just doesn't work, right? Um, when in reality, my understanding is that, take for example, instead of showing tax cuts, like specifically to the United States, instead of showing tax cuts that benefit ordinary people, we should highlight the trickle-down effect of capitalism in the way that luxuries, quote unquote, luxuries and luxury goods are now more affordable to the masses. So I'm going to use the iPhone, for example. Pew Research showed that in 2011, 35% of Americans owned a smartphone. Klaus, you want to take a guess how much that figure is today?
You said the former figure was 37%?
In 2011, 35% of Americans owned
35.
a smartphone.
I
What
would
do you?
say that the rate right now is probably, if I had to pick a specific number, it'd probably be 83, but I'm being optimistic and say
You
over
know,
85%.
it is 85%.
Oh,
Today, that
let's
figure is
go. Let's
85%.
go. Let's
And
go.
furthermore, the allure of profits motivates entrepreneurs, you know, to gain wealth. And for instance, take for example, I have a smartphone. I have an iPhone, and in this iPhone, I'm able to check my portfolio. I'm able to do my job at a startup I work for, and here on this podcast by way of the smartphone that I'm in, that I have in my hand. So I the trickle down effect was basically that I can afford these luxuries that capitalism has allotted me to, have that opportunity, and that's just how I view it. That's just all I got to say on that. I mean,
Yeah, let me
so
add to
when you
that.
think about when you think about capitalism, it also elevates the working class to live like elites, and the United States and Canada are the best. Well, United States is the best example for that.
Exactly. So let's try to tie this
So
into
I
our
want to get
personal
back into
experiences.
the article, but yeah, go ahead, if Klaus, you may want to
Yeah,
respond.
so let me put it this way. So for example, I have two cell phones. I have a Colombian smartphone and a US smartphone. Now, the Colombian one's a Samsung, American one's an iPhone. I have an HP laptop, and I was able to afford what you call these truly wireless headphones. Things that a couple of years ago, say 5 years, would have been way too expensive for me. So, but thanks to the concept of what do you call this, economies of scale, now things that were only affordable to elites are now affordable to common day citizens. And a perfect example of this would be the cell phone. Now, if you guys have watched some of those old school movies like what do you call Scarface, or if you played games like GTA Vice City, you might have realized that smart cell phones were these really big, sort of blocky, kind of inconvenient devices that were only affordable to the wealthiest among us. And nowadays, almost anyone can afford a phone that does way more than those blocky. We used to call them panelas back in the day, because it's similar to a panela. If you guys know what a panela is, now we're able to afford something that is much more powerful, has access to the entire wealth of human intelligence and information at your fingertips for a much lower price than that of what
Mobile.
used to cost.
One word, two words: mobile banking. Much of the world didn't live near banks or have bank accounts, but with the expansions of the phone into the international world and this luxury good that's now in countries like Colombia, Dominican Republic, and Haiti, they're now engaged in the financial system where I can send money on their phone through Cash App, and they can just go cash it out at someplace in their neighborhood, where this didn't exist like 20 years ago. And this is just indicative of, I'm going to call it trickle down luxuries that are now affordable to regular people like you and I.
And in addition to that, you have also international money sending systems like Zoom, XOOM. It's a service by PayPal, and I'm able to use it to send money from my American bank account to my Colombian bank account, which just on my phone, something that was probably inconceivable just 10 years ago. So again, there are social consequences of capitalism, and we can discuss those, and we can, I might even agree with you that some of those social effects are probably not good. But the good thing is that you are now empowered as an individual to let yourself be affected or not by these social effects of capitalism. So I think the big criticism is consumerism. It's like, oh, people just care about, their consumables and what they have and all that. But you don't have to play that game. You can live comfortably and not, have the latest iPhone or anything like that. Just have a decent sort of Chinese made phone that works. So again, the core argument here that I'm making is that you can you can benefit from all the advantages of economics, and since you are empowered as an individual to not suffer the social consequences of what the system may offer, so consumerism and atomization and that type of thing. So I'm always trying to give you guys as much power and ability in your life to do great things, as opposed to rely on someone that is not yourself. In this case, it would be the government to make your decisions for you, because I always believe the individual knows what's best for him. So I'm going to end with that.
Well said. So no, I agree. And to get back to the article, so now we're gonna cover here what I highlighted. In Chile, a former student protest leader to the far left of the nation's political spectrum is ahead in the presidential race. So it seems like the far left in Chile is the I, I saw this a few days ago, but Chile is going to have a presidential race this year, and I know they reformed the constitution. And in one of our earlier episodes, we actually had a professor that spoke about this, and he used the theory of the game of Go, and basically this is what the leftists and the student protesters is doing to shake up Chile's political sense of order. I guess we'll call it democracy, for lack of a better word. And Peru's markets have been whipsawed as President Pedro Castillo, a former rural school teacher from a Marxist party, called for a new constitution, and briefly delayed the appointments of his financial minister. On Friday, Moody Investor Service downgraded. Oh, and separate on Friday, Moody Investor Service downgraded El Salvador. I didn't necessarily look into El Salvador, but I know that I think Moody was neutral last time I checked because of the Bitcoin and the now being a currency in El Salvador. So I didn't know that. It's like very recent. I read this article today. So Ecuador is becoming a bit of an island on the region. Money manager Nuremberg Berman, whose firm holds $30 billion in emerging market debts. Furthermore, Lasso defeated the left-wing protege of the former president Rafael Correa, a self-declared socialist and ally of Venezuela, who defaulted on a $3.2 billion of debt in 2008. Lasso's victory set off a rally that drove Ecuador's bonds due in 2030 up 35 cents on the dollar to 87 cents on the dollar. So if you got bonds in Ecuador, you're doing pretty well, especially the past 3 months. You definitely made some gains.
Would you recommend buying Ecuadorian bonds? Obviously, this is not financial advice, guys. But what would Henry personally do?
Well, if I was looking at emerging markets, I would obviously well, the sell-off was that when Pedro Castillo won in Peru, that the big scare is that now he's going to nationalize silver and copper, I think it was, or just have a stronger footing in that, the government. But from what we've seen in the bond market of Ecuador is that those bonds due in 2030 are up what is it, 52 cents. So the past 3 months, 52 cents on the dollar. That's a good deal. I mean, I'm bullish on Ecuador. I'm bullish on El Salvador, maybe neutral because we actually don't know what may come of when it comes to El Salvador, there's probably a lot more instability. So yeah, no, there's that. What else have I looked at? Barrick Gold is in the Dominican Republic, and they have one of the biggest gold mines in this side of the hemisphere. I would look into Barrick Gold, but rather specifically, I would look into gold if you have money in fiat, just for the sense that inflation isn't transitory, as they say. I mean, a few days ago, I was watching CNBC, and there was a fund manager just talking about yeah, it's not gonna be as transitory as we thought it was. Where we'll get over this hump in 1 or 2 or 3 years. Now it's looking like we're gonna deal with it for the decade. So gold, neutron bonds, silver specifically. The Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, has given us a green light to buy silver, gold, and crypto. So that's my take on it. And I think Klaus would agree on getting out of fiat and going into either things you can hold or the cryptocurrency.
Ooh, yeah, I got a big rant on that one, but I'll let you continue.
Yeah, so just to finish up the article, Ecuador has had a share of its economic instability over the past years. We know that. Um, Lasso still faces considerable challenges. The economy contracted by nearly 8% last year, a record, and the IMF projects it will grow by 2.5% in 2021, less than the pace expected for the region. Losses power to stimulate the economy is also limited because Ecuador uses the US dollar as a currency. This is very important. Ecuador uses the US dollar as a currency, and the US dollar is not in good shape right now. It's no wonder why bonds are doing well and why, you know, uh, well, they elected the right guy, a banker, that I hope he figures it out. But so yeah, so it can't rely on the monetary policy to counteract downturns. Tax and labor reforms that Lasso promised during the campaign will likely face obstacles in the National Assembly, where 2/3 of the lawmakers are affiliated with the leftist center party, skeptical of market-friendly changes. So when I was looking at the National Assembly, it was like 1/3 was like like the indigenous leftists, and then there was like the Rafael Correa type of leftists. So it does face challenge there, and then the IMF extended $4 billion, and I saw this chart, the honeymoon rally on the Ecuadorian bonds. So what we're looking here is Alasso wins the runoff election. That same month, the bonds shoot up, and they've been smooth sailing since. Now the 2035 and the 2040 are slightly less because that's going into the long term, but nonetheless, is that markets are very keen on Malasso. So yeah, that's pretty much what I got on this article related to Ecuador, and I don't know, what are your thoughts, Klaus, on what you heard from Ecuador, what we shared on Twitter, and
As you said, I definitely agree that I'm long on Ecuador, and I'm a little longer on El Salvador because Ecuador is quite democratic. As you can see, you had a leftist guy in power, now you have a more right wing guy in power. So there's a lot of power sharing. There's a lot of as far as I can tell, there's a lot of respect for the opposition, which is often not necessarily a good idea because then in a way you're kind of playing to the opposition's tune because they can block bills and do all that type of thing. But El Salvador is a lot more authoritarian, from what I can gather, and the legislature over there is overwhelmingly pro Bukele. As a matter of fact, I think his party has a majority in the legislature, so they can just kind of pass whatever bills they want. As a matter of fact, the Bitcoin bill was mostly passed in the legislature because of his supporters. But I also wanted to greet Checho here. He's joining us right now. Hey Checho, what's up, man?
No, it's all good, bro. I was here, and yeah, I am very long on Ecuador too, because in the sense that all the capital and all the money that is flowing out of Argentina, of Chile, that now that the mayor of Santiago de Chile is basically part of the Communist Party there, you heard it here. The mayor of Chile's capital, Santiago de Chile, is part of the Communist Party, and now that Bolivia has returned with Evo Morales and his candidate, now that there's turmoil because of Castillo's presidency in Peru, I think that the country that is basically standing out of the pandemic and all of these political moves that have been around here in Latin America in the last 2 to 3 years is Ecuador. Ecuador is not only surviving because Colombia is surviving, but Ecuador is thriving. They basically lowered down taxes. They are basically building roads, and they are making concessions for the development of more ports. Like Lasso is basically getting himself ready to build a huge infrastructure and to provide more better services for all of the people that are in the no, not only in the capitals, but in war in the regions, and that is a very important part here in Latin America because we don't have the same infrastructure or the same kind of quality of roads, trains, uh, train stations in order to provide for everyone. And I think that Lasso is moving in the best of directions there.
That's very good. That's very good to hear. So, Checho, I talked some time ago in the stream about the new proposed tax on e-commerce happening in Colombia. Apparently, if you buy anything above $200, you get taxed. I don't know if you've heard of this.
Oh yeah, yeah. The proposal was made by Centro Democrático by Álvaro Uribe. Yeah, yeah. I saw that. It is basically a tax on importations.
Which is, we already have pretty high taxes on imports, which means that everyday Colombians do not have the same access to, I guess, what we could call luxury goods, but almost in a way are kind of current necessities. And so it is obviously the lower classes of Colombia who suffer that because I mean the very wealthy can afford to pay the tax. It's fine by them. They can buy all the 25% value added tax iPhones that they want, but for an average Colombian who might need that, or a young entrepreneur or a young artist who wants to have an iPhone, because iPhones are very artist friendly. They have iMovie, the camera's pretty good, that type of thing. Well, they're kind of screwed, right? So we are restricting the ability of everyday Colombians to be able to fully maximize their potential. And again, as I've previously stated as well, there are social consequences of having a free market, of having capitalism that are not necessarily good. I talked about consumerism being one of them. But again, in a more free market based society, you have the option to not fall into consumerism. For example, I don't have any brand clothes. Like I have my uniform, I have some cheap clothes that I buy from Colombia, a pair of pants that would cost me, 25, 30 bucks, a shirt, some t-shirts, some normal shoes. I don't have anything fancy on me because I made the choice to not buy brand clothes because I don't need to have expensive clothes. I just need to have clothes that look good and fit. And so, you guys don't need to buy Gucci. Yes, it's available, but you don't have to buy Gucci. You can just buy a little belt that's a little more economic for you. And so I'm always trying to empower individuals. So Henry shared another article. Let me see.
Um, so breaking news, fellas. Uruguay lawmaker proposes bill to allow crypto to be used for payments. Now, this was published actually today, just about 6 hours ago. Nasdaq.com, and I'm going through it with you guys and the audience, so bear with me. So, a senator from Uruguay has introduced a bill to allow businesses to accept cryptocurrencies as payment and regulate their use within the South American country. The bill was presented on Tuesday by Senator Juan Sartori seeks to provide, quote, legal, financial, and fiscal security in the business derived from the production and commercialization, end quote, of cryptocurrencies. So, uh, crypto assets will be recognized and accepted by law and applicable in any legal business. They will be considered a valid means of payment in addition to those included in the financial inclusion laws, as long as they comply with the rules set forth in the law and the regulations, the bill said. Tory's bill would establish that cryptocurrencies are a product of free sale by those entities and individuals who wish to commercialize them, end quote, and states that any natural or legal person may receive or sell funds in legal tender from and to their own bank accounts or those of licensed companies. However, the bill stops short actually treating cryptocurrency as a legal tender, he told CoinDesk. So it seems like the bill came short. If the bill becomes law, the government will issue a, quote, first license and would enable companies to trade cryptocurrencies on exchanges. A second license would allow, quote, storing, holding, and safekeeping storing and holding and safekeeping crypto assets, while a third would be used to issue crypto assets or utility tokens with financial characteristics. My bad, my audio's going in and out. You guys still there by chance?
Yes, I'm here.
Got it. Oh, okay. So according to the bill, Uruguay's executive branch will grant licenses and entities that are in compliance with anti-money laundering, Senaclaf, and the Central Bank of Uruguay. For other transactions, and the use of these instrumentals will be free and not require prior consent, permits, or license. Story's bill also stipulates the regulation of crypto mining. Miners wouldn't need a special license like a doctor, but would need permits from Uruguay's Ministry of Industry, Energy, and Mining in order to operate. So at this point, you guys got the gist of it. In the Senate, the National Parties and the allies form coalitions. Coalición Multicolor holds a majority of 17 out of 30 seats. It looks like the bill is a viable bill. To date, the only one country that's adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, El Salvador, which was approved earlier this year. So it looks like Uruguay might be next. So I would think Klaus is also long on Uruguay and on Ecuador by from what we see here. And
yes, sir. I'm absolutely excited that it is, in fact, Hispano countries which are trailblazing in this sort of field. I mean, it's literally, we're 2 for 2 at this point. 2 for 2. 2 Hispano countries who have enough foresight to understand that central banking, money printing nonsense is not only the way of the past, but I would even argue that it is in a way sort of satanic, because it is these central banks and all this Fed money printing that is destroying the people's wealth that they worked so hard to accumulate over the years.
Theft. It is theft.
And it's absolute theft. And it is exactly, as a matter of fact, one of the commandments is thou shalt not steal, right? So before, one way to protect your wealth would be through real estate, but that's not likely for most people. And then the other way would be through gold and silver, which, in a country like Colombia, it's not a very good idea to hold these things because you can get robbed. But with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, there is a way to store your wealth in a more secure way. I was gonna talk about money printing for a bit, but Tetra has deep dive on the economic realities of Colombia, so I wanted to give the floor to him. Tetra, go take it.
Yeah, I think a great part of it, well, we can know the reason about why Hispanic countries are basically Do you hear me?
I hear you well. Yes.
Yeah, the reason why Hispanic countries are adopting cryptocurrency as legal tenders is because of the uncontrollable trademark that we have in our own economical history about the money printing, inflation, about the control of the central banks, because central banks are not controlled by the commoner, by the by the common peoples. They are controlled by oligarchies. They are controlled by local and national oligarchies in order to fulfill some debts, or to engage in some trade relationships in an international level. But I think that it is a great way to experiment, like the same values that gold has. I am all in for basically the work that we have to do with other currencies. Like we need to use gold, silver, emeralds, other type of precious metals that are not printable, that are not replaceable, and that they have their own special qualities in which you can sense that they are pure, that they are of great quality, and that which can be used as legal tender for contracts or for people to exchange or trade with. I think that will be the end result of it. I think that cryptocurrency, in a sense, fulfills more or less with those qualities and requisites. And yeah, I think that that's one of the reasons why we are migrating more towards that than other countries, because in order to fulfill what is happening there. Now, I wanted to touch something that Claude said previously. It was that here in Colombia we have one of the highest. I'm going to repeat myself. One of the highest taxations for corporations and enterprises. It is about 33% on the OECD. The US has like 8%, 10%. France have like 5%. Like we have even higher taxes than in Scandinavia, in
Wait,
Denmark,
what
in
are
Sweden.
do you say corporate tax, Checho?
Yes, sir. Corporate tax.
The corporate tax in the United States, it's 25%, I think, for corporations. Yeah.
We have 33, man.
Yeah, we Trump when he passed the tax cuts, we went from I want to say we went from 32 to 25, and now they want to increase it to like 39. So yeah, no,
Yeah,
I get where you're coming from. Yes.
yeah, it is a suffocation, and not only that, but you gotta pay the sales tax too. You gotta pay the taxes for your services, because the only provider is the state. And after you see all of the taxes that the entrepreneur has to pay, you don't want to open any business. You don't want to open any corporation. You don't want to open any fulfill of all of those regulations. And with that too, you have all of these importations that you have to pass all of this bureaucracy, regulations, papers. You gotta wait for this agency to respond. Then you gotta change to the other agency to respond, and that is a very difficult process in order to reach out the importation. So you even pay more money with all the paperwork that you are to receive a simple order of importation. And that is basically the reason why we don't have a very exciting market in that sense, because as we are very limited and enclosed in our own system, we are not open to the world and to innovation here in Colombia. That's why we have technology from 10 years ago without any trouble, because importations and innovation are not promoted. And it is very very curious, because in other countries it is allowed to buy and sell used cars, but here in Colombia it is not. So you have a very thriving, uh, I would say, market for motorbikes, but you don't have that for automobiles because they are so expensive for the common man. Like if you have a big truck or a big automobile, like it is a sign of social status. That would be for the common, well, would be for the common American, would be a sign of social status for the average Colombian. So in that sense, you can see how the bureaucracy, regulations, and all of these paperwork, all these uh, these hard steps that we went into to import for taxes, they are basically promoting they are hurting the common people, and they are promoting corruption because you don't have new businesses competing with the old businesses. So you have these established, ages long corporations, family corporations that have been bribing the local politicians, the Senate, even the presidency in order to not import. So they have basically a monopoly, or I would say an oligopoly on the services, on the bikes, on the automobiles, and you don't have any hard competition. So they are basically strangling the common Colombian from goods and services that will be found in other places in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'm not mistaken, with all the taxes and fees and import duties and whatever, the average Colombian business owner, specifically the smaller ones, are probably paying something above 50% effectively to the state. So think about that. You're giving your 100% to try to make a business work, and you're getting back not even 50% of all the effort that you put in. So who in their right mind would want to set up a business in Colombia? It's just absolutely ludicrous. Now, Cheche, I think you mentioned the issue with competition, and if I'm not mistaken, there was a recent example, a little bit of a case study in Colombia regarding telecommunications companies. So in Colombia we had this big monopoly called Comcel, really really early back in the day. I mean, it was still around when I was a kid, and there was very little competition in the Colombian telecommunications market, and sort of call, text, and data plans were pretty expensive and not very good. But quite recently, I think I've seen more telecommunications companies set up shop over here. I think the most recent one that I saw was WOM, WOM, and they offered some pretty good data plans. And I think there was another one, which I can't remember the name right now. But essentially, all this competition has led to very cheap voice, text, and data plans available in Colombia for much cheaper than they would have obtained before. Let me see if I can find it. There was a tweet that someone talked about it. Let me see if I can find it. But in any case, here's a video that I shared here on the screen about, because I think Cheche was talking about using gold and silver as a sort of real money type of thing, and it's really interesting how in Venezuela actually a mix of factors have made it so that some local shops in Venezuela are now operating in gold. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. If you're a small shop owner in Venezuela, it's quite likely that you're now buying and selling goods in gold, in actual gold, not like fake gold, not like digital gold, like real, actual mined gold. So here it says from the tweet from John Aldecoa, it says here, quote, "In some regions of a country, it is becoming common to pay with gold. Causes: hyperinflation of the Bolivar, inflation in dollars, and abundant gold mines." So let's take a look at what's going on over here.
Aquí voy a un supermercado chino, estamos viendo que los precios por unidad son en dólares, los precios por bulto 0.4, 0.3, eso es en oro, todo por bulto es en oro. Ok, luego vamos a revisar los artículos pequeños donde están todos marcados en dólares. Luego voy a pesar lo que me corresponde, en este caso peso en oro. Eso fue en el supermercado chino. ¿Cuánto es?
¿En oro o dólar?
En oro. Aquí compré una sopa y pagué en oro.
¿Cuánto es?
Aquí está. Cabe destacar que aquí usamos los billetes de baja denominación para envolver el oro. En este caso pesamos un punto y el resto se me dio en efectivo, bolívares.
¿Y lo demás en efectivo?
En efectivo el resto.
I'm sure you guys heard that, right?
Yes, sir. So Venezuelans are now, you know, that's going to be their best option. You know, there was a president who ran on the idea of dollarizing, a presidential candidate dollarizing Venezuela in order to save the economy. And I think actually what we just saw in the video is the best option for Venezuela.
Well, here's the thing. I think the dollarization meme is about to die because, as the tweet that I mentioned stated, that if dollar inflation is actually making it so that people are even ditching the dollar, because before this recent development, Venezuelans would just pay things with dollars or any other sort of currency that they can get their hands on. Now, obviously, getting dollars in Venezuela is quite difficult. You might have to access the black market in order to get cheap dollars. But now it's gotten so bad with the dollar situation that they don't even accept that, because as we've seen here in the U.S., and I'm sure, Henry, you've experienced this as well, prices are rising in the U.S. because of all this damn Fed money printing that has led to a rise in prices. And so the dollar has become more devalued as time goes on. I think I read an article here that said that 40% of all U.S. dollars in existence were printed in just the last 2 months. 12 months, sorry. So think about it. In 1 year, the U.S. Fed has created almost half of every single dollar that has ever existed. That is just an exponential acceleration in the printing of money and the devaluing of its worth. And so even Venezuelans are starting to catch up on this and saying, man, we're not going to take dollars anymore. We're going to go back to the real OG, traditional, classic, as good as gold, literally, currency, which is actual gold. Right? It's kind of like a weird return to tradition type of thing, where these very socialist economic policies have gotten so bad that people literally, out of sheer pragmatism, reverted to some sort of weird anarcho-capitalism sort of thing. It's like we don't even have to make an argument anymore. We just have to let things play out, and people figure out things for themselves and realize, oh yeah, gold is kind of like a sound currency, and silver is a sound currency, and cryptocurrencies as well. There was some cryptocurrency used in Venezuela for payments. I think the biggest one was Dash, and they were using that at some restaurants, even some franchise restaurants. Like I think I might have seen a video where they were at a Domino's Pizza restaurant in Caracas, and they were paying with Dash, which was an accepted form of currency. So it's kind of sad that it had to get to this point for people to realize what real money is and how real money stores their wealth as opposed to stealing their wealth. But some lessons do have to be learned in blood, unfortunately. And I think that was a bit of a white pill there, because you're starting to see people realize, these people don't read economics books. Like, they're not super into Thomas Sowell or Adam Smith or any of that shit. Like, they just realize something in real life, right? So you can't say, oh, these are just book nerds, whatever. No, these are real life people engaging in real life situations because of real life problems caused by all this money printing. So hopefully we'll be able to go back to, in Colombia, we'll be able to do something similar. Hopefully we don't have to learn that much of a bloody lesson. Chachi, you want to say something?
Yeah, it is very simple in the sense that when gold and precious metals fulfill some properties, like you can accumulate them. You know that they are of great use. They have intrinsic value, like water, like land, because they can be used for human as a human resource. They are transportable. You can move them from one place to another, and they are valid in all human societies. Like if you give gold to a Chinese man, or to an Egyptian, or to a Russian, or to a Canadian, or to an Australian, like he's gonna like it. Like everyone likes it. Like, nobody dislikes gold, and in that sense, you can tell if it is pure, if it is not pure. Uh, it fulfills certain properties that make it valuable. So it is, you don't need rocket science, you don't need a major in economics, you don't need to know that much to know that, well, gold is valuable. And not only is valuable, I can exchange for it. Like gold is God's money. The fiat currency, it is the man's money. You want God's money. That's why it is traditional.
Right. Be wary of the international central banks that are getting us into trouble, and what's coming next. It's probably, they like to say 3 years, but in reality, it's going to probably be a generational thing that we're going to deal with here in the U.S. And gold is God's money, as Checho said. We will quote him, and we will put that down in the books. I like that. Fiat is man's money. It takes a certain man to, tell us to, and it takes a central bank, a middleman, a merchant, to tell us that, take this fiat currency and we'll keep printing. But I'm not gonna get into much of that. You guys get the gist. Sorry about that.
Well, now that you're coughing, actually, I wanted to ask you about these COVID restrictions in New York that are happening now for unvaccinated people. Do you
Yeah.
think that's going to create an even bigger exodus to more unvax friendly states, and along with that, their money and investments?
There's going to be strong pushback. There's a lot going on in the New York political scene with the Governor Andrew Cuomo. He has been told to resign. It doesn't appear that he is going to resign. And Bill de Blasio is basically like the lame duck mayor. He's going to be out in a few months. But early on when COVID hit, the exodus of New York, like last year in February, one of the ways New York Times covered it, but basically they knew it was because of the 4G network, the cell phone towers. They weren't as dense as it usually is when the city is populated. But that is going to be one of the factors that actually drives people to leave the city. I think crime and small business. Well, I was talking to someone, today at a small business store here in Manhattan, and I was talking about the guy. Where's the guy from? I think he was Puerto Rican. The owner of that store was Puerto Rican, and I was asking him, "Are you going to enforce it?" And he was like, no one in this neighborhood is actually going to come here, like any of those agencies, and actually check what are we enforcing. It's actually like the big shops like the CVS and the Targets and the Whole Foods that are actually going to enforce it. Moreover, like I saw that the mayor of Boston recently said that this is and the mayor of Boston is black. I didn't know that. But basically what she said is that this is like similar to slavery. This is like racist, because certain groups are getting vaccinated less than others, and telling them to show a vaccine card is a problem. I know I saw a tweet that said that vaccine cards okay, but voter ID not okay. It's racist. So to tie it all into New York, I mean, I think there's just going to be an exodus because of the direction that the city is heading in. They say New York is back. I don't think so. I think it's going to take longer than that. But yeah, it's tough. There's certain places I can't go into because I do not have a vaccination card to present. Certain restaurants, not certain bars, because I'm friendly with the working class community, and that's where I like to hang out. But there's some of the ritzy, think Upper West Side liberal elites and the DSA constituency that are in. This is the irony. They're in gentrified neighborhoods where the minority population in those neighborhoods are the ones that aren't getting vaccinated. But pretty much what they're going to do is they're going to enforce that in their businesses, patrons must show a vaccination card. And it's insane. I mean, in weeks to come, I think there is going to be a more genuine and a stronger pushback, but one can only pray. Till then.
Man, it's just crazy, crazy, crazy what's happening out here.
I know Florida is doing really well. There's other states. The state of New Hampshire is really interesting, but it's always doing pretty well. And there's probably going to be an exodus to the more conservative states where there's conservative governors. But we'll see. There's really a lot going on. There's the Biden floating around the idea of every federal employee must be vaccinated. He's going to mandate the vaccination. I don't know how that's going to fly in the Supreme Court, but there's a lot to see, as so what I think it was Rothbard that said, I don't know if you guys find them cringe. Many people do actually, but an individual can't consent to something, that much like private property, your private body, and what we're seeing in France and in New York City and in LA or California, you know, it's against the right of the individual to be forced to take a vaccination that they, don't consent to, this liquid injected into their body. So should be interesting. I mean, I don't know what's gonna happen in the next few months. I mean, there might even be lockdowns coming soon, so we might be stuck here, like just on an eternal stream that never ends because we're locked down again. Can you guys believe that?
I find it really curious
That's very
because
black pilling, but I shouldn't probably have said that.
nah, don't take the black pill. Take the Christ pill. You gotta take the Trinity pill. That is the
I'm
last pill, bro. But
in,
yeah,
bro.
I remember that clause here on Twitter, and I was looking at it before joining. That in Iceland, the country that there is near that there is in the North Atlantic, that is near in between Canada and Norway. Like they have most of this of their vaccinations, and they have one of the most vaccinated populations in the world, and they are getting they are getting locked down. Like it is not even about death. Like because death, if you see the statistic, like around 90% of people recover and they have little to no side effects. So it is not about your physical health. Like if it would be about your physical health, a ton of regulations would be imposed on fast foods, on sugar, on tobacco, on heroin, and other stuff. It is not about health, and it is not about it is not about vaccinations either. It is about control. They are coming for your body and they are coming for your mind too. Because there's this manichaeism, this dualism in which if you're vaccinated, you're good. If you're not vaccinated, then you are bad. And there's no debate about it. Like, oh yeah, you're vaccinated, yeah, you're good. Do you know what that has? Do you know that it has been tested for over 10 years because that is the normal time that our vaccine is to be tested? Was it tested on other living beings? No, I was just vaccinated, and the provider doesn't take any responsibility, neither the state. No one takes responsibility. But hey, I am vaccinated, and if I have any side effects, no one's gonna take care of me. So you have, in that sense, you don't have anyone responsible. It is not about health. It is not about helping you. It is about control. It is about control and control of the narrative, control of the media, control of the means of production. Because now you can get your business open, and it is control of your overall life. It is control of your sociability, the natural aspect of human beings to be social, as Aristotle said. So
Let's dive into virology and vaccines and COVID a bit more, because I want to hear you guys' input on this thing called ivermectin and the horse pace and the other things that are FDA approved, and the one for malaria that's apparently hydroxychloroquine. What are you guys' thoughts on those medicines? And some say they work. I don't know the sample size. The only people I know that taken it is like 2 people, and I don't have a sample size to know if it works. What are you guys' thoughts on these alternative medicines? Oh, they're
Sure,
not
sure.
alternatives; they're FDA approved.
Well, they're going to be alternative real soon. So, first of all, I want to welcome Corky into the panel. Hey, Corky, how's it going, man?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good,
My question
good.
in regards to
All is
like the
well. How you,
whole
Corky?
how you doing, Henry? In regards
Nice.
to like the whole crypto transition that's happening in Latin American countries like El Salvador. How do you suppose that crypto can be implemented in Colombia if basically the Colombian elites are basically maintaining themselves in power and incentivizing a criminal structure of economics that the average Colombian can't participate in. Like,
I
would
think
we?
I think that the question goes for me because I am the Colombian guy living in Colombia.
Because like it's gonna be very
Damn.
hard. it's going to be very hard to implement a cryptocurrency if if let's say your local business doesn't buy into it, if they can't barter with it. Like let's say I can't buy from like the if it's not something that's backed by concrete goods and work, right?
Oh, all right. I feel you. Well, I'm gonna try to answer, but before that, I want to tell you good night. How are you, Corky? It is my pleasure to be here with you. And well, there's a thing to it. There changes in society happen in two ways, right? They come from the top down or from the bottom up. I think that this change will be from the bottom up. Like people would see that the Colombian peso is losing value, that it cannot afford. It will be a natural thing to look for alternative, right? Like that this state mandated currency is basically losing its value. So, and I want to maintain the value of my work. I want to maintain the value of everything that I have done. So how do I change it for? And I think that that will be the moment when mass implementation will happen. Like people, like what is happening in Venezuela, like people see that their currency failed, but business will continue because people need to eat and people need to work. That is a human necessity, and as long as they're gonna be humans, as long as we're gonna have those activities. So, in that sense, I think that it would
Well,
be
the
a
other countries see FOMO, fear of missing out.
yeah, I think that it will be a bottom up change. Like people will basically like, hey, this is very trendy. This is a way to storage value. This is a good way to commerce very easy, very quickly. You don't have that many regulations. You don't pay that much taxes on them. Do not pay too much fees. So it is very beneficial to us. And as people see the benefit, they will adopt it. And people will say, oh, my kids explained this to me, and it will be moving by word of mouth, by common knowledge and common sense appreciation of what is going to happen, and that would basically be noticeable eventually by the state and by the elites, and they will have to do something about it. Well, but that is a good thing about cryptocurrency, like that they are very decentralized, and in the sense that they would need to eventually accept them and accept
But
that
but
the local currency failed.
but therein lies the problem. Will the elite support something that's decentralized? That they'll lose power if they completely support something that they cannot that's not centralized, that they can't control completely.
Well, so that's the thing. The great thing about Bitcoin is that it kind of doesn't matter what the elites think because, as you said, they can't control it, so they can't contain its spread. As opposed to, so say for example, I think this happened in the U.S. I think in the interwar period when FDR was president. So for the war effort, he confiscated all gold. And so that's a bit of an onerous task, but it's still quite possible. You can just have an army and go up to people's houses and seize their gold and that type of thing. But with Bitcoin, it's not that particularly easy. There's a lot more coercion that you need in order to take someone's Bitcoin. You'd have to basically force them to say their seed phrase and that type of thing. So it's a lot more difficult to steal someone's Bitcoin if you're the government. So
I agree.
in a way, it kind of doesn't matter what the elites think, and it's going to be an inevitability, and so they're going to have to accept that for once the people got one over them. As Checho said, I'm going to add to what he said about this being a bottom-up type of thing.
Bottom up, yeah.
Yeah, so in Colombia, I did see a couple of businesses that were already transacting in Bitcoin as early as, I'd like to say, late 2017, early 2018. It was very few. They mostly tended to be barbershops, and in the front of the business, they would say, we accept Bitcoin. I found it particularly interesting because Bitcoin back then, even though it had already 7 years as a concept, was still very much new and even newer still in Colombia. So the fact that there were already people transacting in Bitcoin as early as 2017 kind of shows that some people are starting to get it. Now, I think that my goal here, and it would be your guys' goal here as well, is to basically become the spokesman for Bitcoin in your local community. As a matter of fact, I remember that in 2020 when the lockdowns in Colombia were happening, I started telling my closest friends, relatives, even people in the streets, like, hey, the peso is not going to survive this lockdown. And, buying dollars it's a short-term solution, but you think the guys over there are not printing money as well? So I try to explain, even to random people. I remember I was in Bogota doing some paperwork that I had to do in order to have my student visa and go to the U.S. I was just telling random people at the embassy, random people in the bus, that type of thing. I was telling them, hey, you might want to consider looking at this Bitcoin thing. It's like real money. They're not going to take away your wealth. So I don't know how many people listen to me and follow my advice. But that's kind of our job here, is to tell
Yeah.
people the absolute evil of fiat currency and how to protect your wealth against it, because they are coming after your wealth.
Yeah, obviously, and they completely control it. I just want to state one more thing. I think the success of alternative methods of currency and its circulation amongst the average man, it's going to depend on the elites basically ruining themselves and the economy into inflation, the fiat currency that is, and basically regular everyday citizens creating businesses and taking the risk and using cryptocurrency increasingly as a tool of barter. Yeah, that's all.
Nice. Fair enough. I wanted to share an article of El Salvador and the benefits of Bitcoin from Bank of America, and maybe some of the things here that are said in some of the pointers will address what Corky has skepticism about. But basically, Bukele tweeted recently what BOS. I don't know if it can be seen here. Yeah, it doesn't look good. Does it look good on your screen? It looks kind of like blurry.
It's very blurry.
Yeah, but maybe it's I keep scrolling down. But opportunities. So remittances. As you guys know, I think 25% of Salvador. Well, here it says workers' remittances could benefit from lower transactional costs. Remittances flow at a very substantial 24% of GDP in El Salvador. The Bank for International Settlements estimates that the average cost for bank-based cross-border remittances is over 10%. Therefore, if current transaction costs are 10%, this would amount to 2.4% of the GDP, a sizable sum for El Salvador. Using Bitcoin for remittances could potentially reduce transactional costs compared to traditional remittances channel. So, a substantial part of the Salvadorian economy relies on mostly the Salvies here in the United States to send money back. And they're dealing with a challenge that once they cross over the channels, they have to pay like a 10% tax fee or whatever it is where they cash it out. And using Bitcoin could perhaps lower that cost. If using Bitcoin indeed lowers transaction costs, then for every dollar that the Salvadorian diaspora sends home, a greater portion of that dollar could be received by recipients, increasing their disposable income and reducing the proportion of remittances lost to financial intermediates. However, it is unclear how the transactional fees would be compared to traditional remittance channels. Okay, point two, financial digitalization with progressive touch. Another positive implication is financial digitalization, where more than 70% of the population in El Salvador does not have a bank account. For that reason, democratizing access to electronic payments through Bitcoin has a progressive touch. Yeah, it's funny. It's just like I was mentioning earlier with Klaus about the trickle down of luxuries. This is like the example right here that was posted just 2 days ago by the president of Salvador. Third point, greater consumer choice. One can make the case that adopting Bitcoin as a legal tender is about giving more choice to consumer, embracing innovation, and doing more business with American companies. Consumers will not be forced it used. Consumers will not be forced it used it, and business can decline to accept if they lack the technology to do so. We disagree with the notion that it is coercive that business will legally be bound to accept Bitcoin as a form of payment as long as they have the proper technological infrastructure. In this case, the seller payee can automatically convert the payment to dollars using the electronic wallet Chivo, which is linked to the clearing housing through the transactional cost may apply. Final point was business with American firms and potential to attract Bitcoin mining FDI. Bitcoin adaptation could also bring FDI flows into El Salvador. There could be FDI from Strike, developer of the payment platform, Bitcoin miners, ATM manufacturers, among other types of firms. Indeed, a source of FDI could come from Bitcoin mining. Following the precedent of Iceland, Iceland has become a hotspot in Bitcoin mining, drawing in firms mainly because the country's low-cost geothermal energy, which is what Bukele set up, what he's going to use as well. Bitcoin mining is electricity intensive, and El Salvador is oh fuck, I lost the article on my end. Okay, where was I? Bitcoin mining is electricity intensive. El Salvador is a country with high volcanic activity. Bukele said that the state-owned geothermal company La Geo could produce clean energy from volcanoes to supply Bitcoin miners. So yeah, that was basically a statement from Bank of America where they're pretty positive on Bitcoin. However, the IMF is pretty much gave the opposite statement and saying that they're, opposed to the regulatory measures that come from Bitcoin, blah, 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 blah. But I don't think that the IMF is going to have much of a say once Bitcoin is appropriately implemented in El Salvador. So
I mean,
what can they do
think-
to El Salvador? El Salvador, I mean, this might be a nihilistic perspective, but they had nowhere else but to look for alternatives. They had nothing else to do but to look up, and so they're just taking a chance on Bitcoin and seeing if it becomes illegitimate.
Well, I mean, all the indications prove that it can be very much so beneficial to El Salvador. I mean, I don't see it being much
yeah.
much of a
So let me
setback as one would think.
Let me put it this way. It took Bitcoin 7 years from 2010, I think it was created, to 2017 to get any sort of mainstream appearances. It was still kind of on the fringe, still kind of being talked about mostly by geeks and economics nerds and that type of thing. But 2017 was Bitcoin's first kind of big explosion event, where it kind of exploded in popularity. And then it took 3 years from that point on. Actually, no, it was 4, because from 2017 to 2021 was the next big year for Bitcoin, where it surpassed, I think we went as high as 60,000 per Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is this kind of thing that goes very slowly and then all at once. There's this massive explosion. This year has been basically the year of the institutionalization of Bitcoin. We've seen so many companies invest in it, use it as a hedge, an alternative hedge fund, use it as a savings fund, use it for investment. I think the best case example of this would be Tesla. I mean, just a year ago, this would be unheard of. One of the world's major companies investing so heavily on Bitcoin, and now it's gotten to the point where
I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon is exploring that, because I have heard.
If Amazon takes it, it's official. It's coming.
And the great thing is that the more people adopt it, the less chances you have for any one person to control the price. Because when Elon Musk was kind of becoming this sort of avatar of Bitcoin, any tweet he sent would send the price really high or really low. Sometimes he would FUD Bitcoin. FUD, for those of you who don't know, is an acronym, FUD, that stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And basically, when you are FUDing a cryptocurrency, it means you're kind of talking bad about it in order to disincentivize people from investing in it. So when Elon Musk would post a very FUD-like sort of tweet, the price of Bitcoin would go down quite a bit. But now it's gotten to the point where Elon Musk tweets can no longer influence the price of Bitcoin. It's becoming kind of increasingly uncontrollable by the big powers that be. So, and again, just think of this. Think of this crazy thing. It took Bitcoin 11 years for it to be adopted by one country,
Well, it's
which was the
very
first.
simple. It's very simple. Crypto, whether it replaces fiat, we're not 100% sure, but it's becoming a viable currency because it's simply more and more people are buying into it. You're having millions and millions of people.
Exactly. And obviously, I don't want to say that it's 100% safe investment in the short term. Obviously, there's going to be a bit of price volatility. So, just always make your own research. And to all the Feds watching, this is not financial advice, obviously. But I just wanted to point out to the audience that it took Bitcoin 11 years to be officially adopted by one country, which was the first country, El Salvador. And then the second country happened just in this very same year. It only took a couple of months. Now, again, I think in the Uruguayan case, it's not still fully official whether it's going to be adopted. It's being proposed as legislation. And
Yeah, up in
so,
the Senate. And what's interesting is that would Bukele be considered like to the right of, like, in his politics? Is he like?
he could be considered a right-wing authoritarian, we could say, or a
Well,
strong man.
yes.
I guess to put it more mildly, a
In
strong.
Uruguay? In Uruguay?
No, in El
well,
Salvador. Uruguay's more
Oh,
democratic.
pardon me, Bukele. Okay,
well, no,
my fault.
Uruguay has shifted right to the right with Lacale Po, I think his name, an Italian name, but they've shifted to the right. And what he basically did is that he gave resident visas to high earners in Buenos Aires and investors to come to Uruguay, and they'll expedite their residency. And it has worked really successful, considering that Uruguay has the lowest fertility rate in this side of the hemisphere, I think. So that, and the national party of the guy who proposed it in Uruguay is a part of the party of the president, which are in the majority. So I think Uruguay will be next. The article that I just covered came out just 6 hours ago on the NASDAQ. So I think Uruguay will most likely be next to implement Bitcoin and in this sense of
moving on to the
currency.
Caribbean, Henry. You suggested that there were proposals about the Dominican Republic potentially participating in Bitcoin, the economy.
Yes, but I got to be very mindful because this is more like conversations that I've had with particular people, and the Dominican Republic is going through something really interesting with Barrick Gold, the gold company that mines gold in Dominican Republic. And what I basically heard is that from let's just say close friends or close acquaintances, is that the Dominican Republic would be interested once they renegotiate the contract that they have with Barrick Gold, which actually it's been very successful this year in the renegotiation of taxation, in the sense that Barrick Gold was kind of getting away with murder, and now what the current administration recovered was 2 times more than what was recovered last year with the previous administration.
Yeah,
and once they go from there, it was so President Abinader and his party they extended the contract, but they implemented a more efficient and a cutting edge tax that is just more efficient, in the sense that it's not going to the bureaucratic process, but rather it's going to the needs of that area.
You told me, Henry, you told me a couple of months ago that Barrick Gold, or like these gold mining companies in Dominican Republic, they were sucking resources from the country and not really investing back into the nation.
Because that money was going into the previous administration, the PLD, and it was
ridiculous. I think it was like
it was a ridiculous contract. Doesn't come to mind, but nonetheless, during the last fiscal year, the Dominican Republic recovered from Barrick Gold was at 185 million. This year, what was recovered is 320 million, I think it was. This is USD. And the contract was just better negotiated that the money is going to be more localized to that community as opposed to going to the bureaucrats that pocket 90% of that, and we don't know, God knows what they're doing. And nonetheless, is that I've been hearing the idea floating around that perhaps it's time to nationalize the gold like it once was in Dominican Republic 20 years ago. But
Absolutely.
when I was talking to family members that the company went the company went bankrupt, and basically what happened is that there was like all this pollution and this and that, and there wasn't any, there was already contaminations in the rivers and in the waters, and the exploration process was I think it was like 15 times longer just to get into the next steps and start actually mining the gold, where now that's just the cost of it has just been cut substantially. And there's that idea that it's floating around where it's like, let's just get rid of Barrick Gold and nationalize the gold company. I am opposed to that. I think the appropriate measure would be to renegotiate the contracts and just have a more efficient tax system. But a few people have floated around that the Dominican Republic should incorporate a cryptocurrency that's pegged to the gold in the country. There is a top 5 crypto, I think, Klaus, we've talked about it once, that is with the it's pegged to what's the US dollar here. I forgot the name of the actual cryptocurrency, but this is like really early in the works. But I'm just really amazed. But actually, I'm just like really curious of like what what do they want to do from here? Like where would they go from here on out, right? So
yeah, this is a very interesting time in Latin America with basically the inflation of the fiat and the introduction of Bitcoin and Latin Americans finding utility in precious metals. I have a question regarding the nationalization of the gold mines in the Dominican Republic, of the resources.
It's failed before, and it's not going to work again.
Absolutely,
but,
yeah.
What's it?
No,
it was the National Dominican Gold Company in 1998. He nationalized it. There just wasn't any resource. Well, there just wasn't any resources to actually explore the land and mine the gold and actually have appropriate safety precautions to the being mindful to the people that live there. And then when Barrick Gold came in, it was a complete 180, where it was just done more efficiently. It was much more better than what you saw 20 years ago, and it was it's a private company and it works well. But the problem was that the bureaucratic process was taking a lot of the money that they were taxing Barrick Gold with, and it wasn't going to the people. It wasn't being spent appropriately. So
yeah, because it's very dangerous to just let one government to just have complete control over like such a vital resource to the Dominican Republic like gold.
So let me provide a counterexample, because yes, I do generally, as a matter of principle, oppose companies owning businesses, because that gets very politicized, especially nowadays. But a good example of a state-run company that... Sorry?
State-run companies.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So a good example... Yeah, so an example of an actually very efficient state-owned company that probably wouldn't have been able to, that no private company would have been able to rival would be Eskom, which is a South African electricity company. Now, back in the apartheid days, it was actually one of the best electricity providers in the whole of Africa, providing the best quality electricity for the lowest price, I think, in the entire continent, or if not in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, this was possible because there were actually very competent people within Eskom. There were no diversity hires, or there was no politicization of the company. and it was just set to do one thing right: provide cheap and good electricity. And as a matter of fact, I think ESCOM did not have any budgetary issues during that time. Now, of course, in the post-apartheid government, any state company is obviously going to get very politicized because the government has a political incentive to put more Black South Africans into these companies and in private companies as well. It's a program called Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment. And the sort of, as we all know, it doesn't matter who the target for the diversity program is, but any diversity program is inevitably going to hire people who are less competent simply because of some quota that they have to fulfill. So, and this issue of nationalization versus privatization, again, I can make a very ideological case on why companies should privatize, but I think the more important question here is, okay, if a company is state run, is it being effective? If it is, I don't particularly see an issue remaining for it to remain nationalized just on a pragmatic base. As long as this company still adheres to market principles, because you can have a nationalized company that does adhere to market pressures, and you can even have some private companies who do not necessarily adhere to market pressures because they get some favors from the government, and at that point you can kind of question, well, is it really a private business? But yeah, so I think the issue here with this whole Dominican gold thing is, well, if you're going to nationalize it, what's your end goal? Because if your end goal is to simply sack the company, drive its resources in order to, I don't know, fuel your political ambitions.
By the way, it's highly unlikely, but it just surfaced in like the most left-wing circles of Dominican politics, but it's super highly unlikely just because of what and the previous the Gen X or millennials in their lifetime saw what happened when a bankrupt nationalized company fails and what it led to, right?
Exactly, and in the case of Hispanoamerica, we do seem to have a lot of these cases of state-owned or very strongly state-affiliated companies being not just ineffective, but downright even dangerous at times. If I'm not mistaken, you guys remember that sort of it was a very viral tweet a couple of months ago where there was a part of the ocean that was on fire because of an oil leak, and everyone was blaming capitalism on it or whatever, and the patriarchy and that type of shit. And it turns out that the company who made the oil spill was Pemex, which is the national oil company of Mexico. And actually, I think its highest director was actually a woman. And from what I read from the tweets, and I can't verify this with you guys, apparently Pemex is basically the Mexican government's piggy bank. So any Pemex revenues just go to the government, and the government obviously uses that on cheap politicking and social programs and political ambition and that type of thing, which led to Pemex's resources being very scarce. So they couldn't innovate, they couldn't renovate certain things that they had to fix, and that's what kind of led to the oil spill. So
one of my ask, who is auditing and who is auditing the state-run companies, and if so, are you sure they're not cooking the books?
That is also very
as
true.
Profitable as you think they are,
Yeah, and there's a whole part to it because you can see that in Colombia, like the incompetence of corruption, because there's more incentives towards big business, big old family-owned business that have been in relationship with the Congress, with congressmen, with lobbyists, with the presidency, for them to stop importations and to basically change the books, to corrupt, to impose regulations, like to avoid a more open market in that sense. Like you could see that there is incentives not only here in Colombia, but from what I hear in Dominican Republic too, to force maybe the familiars or the nearby people that are around a politician for them to own the business, and it creates a kleptocracy. It creates a very corrupt government and a very unlawful relationship within the state and the private peoples. I think that it is called popularly crony capitalism.
Yeah. Well, the airline companies was one example. here in the United States very recently, where they get bailed out, and these are like the least competitive companies. If you look at their books, the stock of JetBlue, United, American Airlines, um, and then you compare it to Singapore Airlines and these international airlines that, because of restrictions that they can't fly here domestically, um, we don't get better service here when it comes to flying. But these were the companies that were bailed out by the U.S. government not too long ago, and
As a matter of fact, Avianca also got bailed out as well with taxpayer money. Well, obviously it was going to be taxpayer money. And so I remember Colombian Libertarian Twitter going crazy over it, saying, how dare you use the taxpayers' money to bail out a company that was doing bad even before COVID hit? And it's true. And I mean, look, I have a loyalty program in Avianca. I fly Avianca regularly. I think it's, in my very personal experience, one of the better airlines operating in Colombia, because I had a really bad experience with LATAM. And after that, I just did not want to go with them anymore. And
the reason these airlines failed was because of greed. They made bad economic decisions, and they thought that they would never fall, that they were too big to fail. And they made their mistake, and now the taxpayers have to take the hit.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, well, the U.S. airline companies are government monopolies. Let's just be honest here.
Absolutely. And very interesting that we're getting into the topic of airlines, because I'm actually I'm taking classes in my university related to airlines and economics and all that type of thing. And I think ICAO, which is the sort of, I guess you could say it's the UN of aviation, has laid out this sort of program of freedoms of the air. So what freedoms are you granting to airlines to operate within your airspace? And I think the final freedom is known as cabotage. Let me see if I can cabotage. So yeah, so this is the final freedom of the air, and it says it's the right to operate airlines and transport services within a particular territory. So I think cabotage is not employed by any government, if I'm not mistaken. And what cabotage basically means is that, let's say for example, American Airlines has a flight from New York to Bogota, but American Airlines would also be able to have a flight from Bogota to Barranquilla. So it's now an American airline operating domestic routes, which, if I'm not mistaken, is unheard of. I think no country has ever authorized that, because it does break the airline monopolies, and flag carriers, or the national airlines of countries, they are very political and nationalistic projects. The U.S. is an exception to this, but most countries do have a flag carrier, a particular airline where they can say, that's my national airline. It's almost like having a national team of aviation. In Colombia, it's obviously Avianca. The UAE, it would be Etihad or Emirates. The UK would be British Airways. And so these companies get favors from their government because these airlines, in a way, represent their government in the air, which obviously leads to a lot of cronyism, to corruption, to getting bailed out, these type of things. And so, unfortunately, the airline industry is still very much restricted in that sense. Now, of course, and I've actually, last semester, I did a course on this, on aviation legislation, and one of the lectures we were doing was the Deregulation Act of 1978, because before the airlines were very strictly regulated, only the richest could fly, but nowadays anybody can fly. Now again, the democratization of air travel does have some issues. I'm sure you guys have seen all these fights going on in airports, so you kind of have to ask, okay, maybe our airline price is too low, and are we letting the wrong people into airports, because airports, at least in the U.S., are becoming a bit chaotic. I'm sure. Have you guys seen these fights happening at these airports?
Shout out to Spirit Airlines. It is what they embody is Soul Plane Airlines. You remember Kevin Hart and Sir Plane, with the Popeyes on the plane, and
the hood ghetto brand of airlines, right? And their flights are mad cheap. You could get a flight for like a few, like less than $100.
Exactly. And
Exactly, and obviously that price might be a bit too low, and you're probably letting the wrong people in when you set it that low. But again,
We
so don't
we
fly that airline.
we's going to Sasulis for $30.
I, I didn't mention any type of particular group. I don't know what you're talking about, homie. I just
Spring
seen the
break,
videos.
spring break, Miami Beach.
Oh
Everybody
God,
and their
no.
mama out there.
Oh hell no. Yeah, I still remember the videos, bro. It's crazy.
Puerto Rico. We're going to Puerto Rico for $50.
Yeah,
So
we out here in
again,
San Juan. Shout out to Spirit Airlines.
so
Right. I
so
mean,
exactly.
the airline industry. What do bankrupt airlines tell us? What do government monopolies tell us about the airline industry? What do our unions tell us about the airlines industry? So there's a lot to this to unpack in this topic of
Well,
airlines.
I mean, if they're private unions, that is a
Okay,
component of the free market,
fair
and
enough.
I'm not gonna criticize or praise unions the same way that I'm not gonna praise or criticize corporations, as in the concept itself. It's just what it is, So my issue is always obviously going to be with public sector unions, because public sector unions are not dealing with paying customers. They are dealing with the taxpayer. So their demands directly affect me. So for example, I mean, to put it in a more, so let's give the example of a free market private sector union. So say for example, some union is making some particular object a bit too expensive. Well, if I'm able to forego paying for that product or service, then I'll just be able to do it. You know, they made demands that are not reasonable to the consumer, so I'll just not consume from the more union based sort of things, right? And I guess that also works in the context of where I would like to work. I live in Florida, and I would like to work in Florida because, if I'm not mistaken, Florida is I think they call it a right to work state, where you don't have to join a union if you don't want to.
Yes, sir.
Exactly, and I want to be given that choice. But with public sector unions, well, now like all of us are the customers. So these teachers unions, well, where does public education come from? It comes from your taxes. Now, yes, in the U.S. that
Yep.
comes from your property taxes, so it's a bit more localized. But in other countries, it's not like
N-
that.
n-
So these,
Not everywhere, by
sorry.
the way. In the in New York City and Chicago, and then in Maryland, Baltimore, and D.C., the county or the city proper actually pays the same amount to all pupils. So New York City public school pupil, each one is worth $20,000, and this has been increasing. Yet the public school system in New York City has not improved. Actually, test scores have remained stagnant, and moreover, this year it has declined with virtual learning. But what's interesting is that charter schools in New York City have done really well. Moreover, there's this like charter school up in Harlem that Thomas Sowell wrote a book about not too long ago, where they had a 99% graduation rate. And it's just amazing that, cities continue to ignore or push back, or just find ways to limit how many charter schools can be built in a certain area. I mean, so that's one comparison where you see a stark difference in test scores and in graduation rates for students. I think the school across the street from that public school, the charter school in Harlem that has the 99%, there's a public school that has I think it was a 20% graduation rate, high school students.
Well, I think that
So
it is a great opportunity to talk about the vouchers and homeschooling, right? Because we cannot say that the state is neutral, right? We have seen that the state is enforcing some political agendas. It is making propaganda about some lifestyles, about certain types of persons to deal with your kids in public school, and they don't have maybe they don't have God in their minds, right? Maybe they have other stuff in their minds. So I think that it is a very good question to make. Like in Colombia, it has not been implemented from what I know. Like there's teachers that do it, but it is a very uh, weird case. It is not the most common of it all, but I think that it would be very good to make regulations here about it. Like if you homeschool your kids, it is way cheaper than a public school or a private school. It's a great way to teach them about your faith, to practice it, because you know the faith is not something merely intellectual. Like to teach them to pray. I don't know, teach them Latin, Greek, Arabic, Russian, to teach them other languages. Like you see intellectuals like John Stuart Mill. Like I'm not an utilitarian, but he knew like three languages when he was like 14. I'm like, God, I am turning 20 and I barely know three. So like in that sense, you could teach them how to work. You could teach them how to do certain exercises, like to practice. I don't know, kung fu, jiu-jitsu. Like you can teach them math. You could help with the help of the internet, with the help of private teachers, or not only private teachers, but you yourself, with the ability to decide how to raise your children, and maybe later fulfill some documents or some tests or exams to see their own ability. Like you could see that there is a better way to avoid bullying, to avoid your kids being taught something that you don't like. Like it is a great way to avoid a ton of the social problems we have right now, and it's a great way to teach them to be disciplined, to avoid them doing drugs, to avoid them the girls getting impregnated from a very young age. Like it is a great way to get them out of the streets. Like it is a great way for parents to take care of their own children. I think that it needs to be very more talk about.
Absolutely. And before anyone says, "Oh, but the homeschool kids are going to end up socially awkward," blah blah blah. I mean, first of all, I don't think the evidence even shows that. I've seen articles where they say they're actually better socialized. But in the case that you do feel this way, homeschooling doesn't have to be a one family affair. I think I've heard of the concept of homeschooling co-ops, where several families put the kids into, like, say for example, and it's a kind of I've seen a rotation basis sort of thing, right? So let's say we have five families and they all homeschool their kids. Let's say they have two kids each, so that's about 10 kids. So so 1 month, one family is going to do the schooling, and then in the next month, the other family is going to do the schooling for all the 10 kids, right? So they rotate between teachers, rotate between environments, and so there's still a socialization aspect, but it's still homeschooling. So it's like having the real experience of school and the experience of homeschooling all in one. And as Gigi says here, there's school trips for kids that are homeschooled, exactly. And you can actually, that's a very good comment you made there, Gigi, because with homeschool trips, you can actually take them to, for example, a cathedral and tell them about the story of this cathedral and when it was built and who is it dedicated to, that type of thing. You can organize, Sunday prayers at the local church, and that could be a sort of, school activity. There's like a million things you can do with homeschooling. It's all really, the only limit is your imagination and your will, your ability to actually see things materialize. So
Yes, and this implementation, this decentralized education, where the community and the parents educate the children. This was I hate to say this, but this is going back to tradition, because this is how the people who had access to education were able to learn, like 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 200 years ago. Was basically like your parents in the community. You had one person that taught you math, and maybe you had another person that taught you how to like hunt, and 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 you know and you learned things that were practical, right? Like if you learned how to hunt, like you could bring food back to the community and stuff like that. I mean, it's just a very simplistic example, but do you guys get what I mean?
no, exactly. The possibilities are endless. And so instead of teaching kids about, I don't know, what do you call it, the Pythagorean theorem. Well, I'm not saying it's not important, But some people do not need that type of thing in their life. They're probably going to be exactly as you said, Corky. They're going to be butchers, they're going to be hunters. So it's better to already instill those values and abilities into the kids. Sorry, Henry.
I wanted to say what Checho and Corky mentioned about homeschooling and tradition and whatnot is what comes to my mind is that if you look at the education system today, but if you look at it even 50 years ago, where there was like NASA, the space program, etc., and then when you look at it even 100 years ago, where like it was common for a student, let's say in Europe, they speak 5 languages, where today it's like they schools want to ban Shakespeare because it's just too wordy and complicated. It's a dead white man's book, so why should we read these things? So it's like, have we gotten stupider? We're not as smarter as we were 100 years ago or even 50 years ago. And
I guess as a devil's advocate.
There's some commentary about that from a Frenchman that is Alexis de Tocqueville. Like he made a book called Democracy in America, where he basically went out of France when the French Revolution came about and the reinstallment of the monarchy, and he basically studied all aspects of liberalism, and he said that one aspect of liberalism and the marketization of every social aspect, that the importance of money made is mediocratization. Like it is mediocre, right? Like most people care about money, they don't care about arts, they don't care about intellectual knowledge and so on and so forth. And I think that the liberalism that I would support, because I normally don't support liberalism, would be that of Alexis de Tocqueville, because he's very self-aware of the limitations of it, and he proposes a very prudent and very slight, that guy, a very prudent
one of the only
liberalism.
tolerable liberals is Tocqueville. He's probably the only tolerable liberal.
Yeah, he's he's a very sound and smart guy, and I think that in a sense, like more people are getting knowledge, but it is not of the best quality, and I think that homeschooling and local communities, like you said, like your kids could work with your neighbors' kids, like they could go to the park and they'll be socializing, to go to the jiu-jitsu club and they're gonna be socializing with other kids, go to the hunting club and they will learn with other kids when they are older, or go see with their cousins, with their other brothers. Like they would socialize and get this cultural and social background that would basically make them more part of the community and more part of the family. Because if you're raised by the TV, you're not gonna talk like your parents. You're gonna talk in the same way as the cartoons. You're losing that cultural background, that cultural knowledge. So it is a great way to reestablish the commitment towards the family, the community, work, God. I think that it is the best solution to the problem that we have right now with the lockdowns, that we are basically getting away from one another, like to be social. Like I made a tweet just now, and Klaus to put it on a like. Well, don't show it, Klaus. Like don't show my tweet.
Okay. I see you.
I was talking about that. We need to be social.
So, like the political and the I think the political and corporate structure opposes to me, and it's becoming clear that they oppose community learning or homeschooling, because I guess people become more independent from people become more, in a sense, people become more independent from that structure. And so it's not just that they can't be controlled as easily, right? Like that they have only like this role to do things, or this standard of education. They could branch out more and create a more stable community, a more business oriented community that's not controlled by,
it'll be much
by
more
Johnson and
localized.
Johnson or the Fed or whatever union.
Exactly. Now, there are obviously challenges in regards to homeschooling in Latin America because, well, in order to teach, you kind of need books. Yes, we do have the internet, but not every community in Hispanoamerica has access to the internet. As a matter of fact, and I have to give some background on this. I was in Barranquilla back when I was in holidays about 2 months ago in Colombia, and I met up with this guy who I actually met on Twitter, and I linked up with him, and he's doing a lot of cool charitable work. He's he does a lot of retweets and a lot of like, hey guys, if you could help out, do this thing, that thing. And while I was talking to him, and technically he lives in Malambo, which is close to Barranquilla, but when I was talking to him, I was telling him, hey, do you guys do education programs for underprivileged children? He's like, yeah, sure. I mean, there's education sponsorship, so you can sponsor a child's education. I think he said that for as little as 50,000 pesos a month, which is not even like, it's not even $50 at this point, a month, you can finance a kid's education. And in addition to that, he has a little bit of a community school. It's obviously very, well, it's not government funded at all. It's like, it's literally someone's house, and they just put the kids there and they learn stuff like that. And he was telling me, we kind of need books. We need the Nachole, which is the Colombian reading book for all kids that are learning how to read and write. And we need, dictionaries, we need math books and all that. And I told him, well, I don't have money right now, and I've helped you before, but I don't have money now. But when I come back to the U.S., I'm going to save up some money, and I'm going to ship out some books to you. And it's like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I think the challenge here to not just dwell too much on the theory and the what if, and we could do this, that. A very actionable thing we can do is go to an underprivileged community in Hispanoamerica. I mean, preferably it's one that you can know and trust. Obviously, just don't be a complete stranger in an Hispanic country and try to help out. Try to help out your community first. You go to these underprivileged areas, you see where the issues are, and specifically education-wise, you can set up a little local school, buy some books, maybe sponsor a teacher to help the students learn, and that type of thing. And so that's kind of the real life application of what the ideas we're spreading and talking about here can be actually done in real life. Let me see if I can pull up some of the guys'
Claus, I have
tweets
a
here.
question in regards to helping fund this schooling in that area. I mean, you can set up a GoFundMe, right? And maybe people can chip in to help fund this program that this guy is in Colombia, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We can certainly do that. I think we would need a bit more numbers in order to be able to do this. As far as I know, it's been a one-man operation on my part. I've sent
And
a couple of.
if everybody chips in like $5, you'll have a decent amount of funds. I mean, it won't be like a lot of money, but it'll be enough to like help them keep afloat, right?
Oh, it'll go a long way for sure. And if you don't feel comfortable donating money because you think, oh, Klaus is gonna steal it or whatever, you can always donate books. You can always donate books. Obviously, they would have to be in Spanish, or if they were in English, it'd have to be like how to learn English for kids type of thing. So here's the guy. It's at Gallo Matrix. His nickname is El Pollo de Toña, and this was just basically a thank you tweet because some lady was having needed to have a home built for her, and so I kind of pledged to help him out on that. It says, thanks a lot to Klaus for your contribution to building materials for the home improvement of this Meth Pedrano. God is blessing us. And so here I quote tweeted him and said, Miss Lisbeth Medrano's home renovation is coming along rather well, but we still need some more help. There's still cement, running water, and electricity installments needed. DM at Gallo Matrix for info on how to contribute. If unable, an RT goes a long way. So this is the family that I've been helping out over the past month. I've given some concurrent donations. And here's kind of like what's going on. They got the cement going. They're building up her house real nice. And
It's a brick home.
I think that, and in addition to that, there have been some other charity drives that we've done. So here's some additional projects. There was a diaper donation drive which was made by Alex Guillero, and there was an acquisition of a wheelchair for this lady here, Miss Tomasa, because she's disabled and she's too poor to afford a wheelchair. So this guy called what's his name? Samuel Weingart, he donated the share itself. So he didn't. I don't think he even pledged any money. He just literally gave the wheelchair, and so that's kind of what we're doing. You don't necessarily have to link up with him. And I don't expect, non-Colombians to care about Colombians. So for example, I would expect, Henry to care more about Dominican issues and Corky as well. That's totally understandable. We are a tribal species. But link up on Twitter. I know that social media tends to be very cancerous, and I can absolutely understand that and even agree with you. But that's why, social media is just a tool. It's kind of like a hammer. You can use a hammer to destroy, or you can use a hammer to build. And another one of the take-home points that I want to bring to you guys is social media is a tool that can be used for construction, to do very constructive things in this world, and it's just a matter of how you use it. If you're using it the wrong way, to be very negative and spew hate online, and to troll, and not even troll in a good way. Troll, like you guys know what's been going on with these StreamYards. That's just going to lead to nowhere. It doesn't help anyone, and it might even destroy your soul because just look at what you're doing. But if you use social media as a constructive tool to build connections, to retweet people who need some help, that type of thing, I think we can do something beautiful out here. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say, really.
Yeah, I think it's a very good way to contribute to your own communities. As we said, like our own first way to fight individualism and to get over the atomization of the peoples that we are seeing right now with the lockdowns, where you don't know your neighbors, you don't wait for them. Like, come by, like invite them. Hey, how are you? Hey, my name is so and so. Like, hey, it's so good. Like, hey, do you need sugar for your coffee? Hey, what can I help you? Do you want us to make a barbecue? Like, talk with them. Like, have a common life, have a social life. Like, as a human being, you're a social animal, as Aristotle said more than 300 years ago, and you need to get in a social life. Like, it is very good to read, to know, like, to be a nerd. It is not bad, but get to know your own people. And in the same sense, you can get to know opportunities, job opportunities. In the same sense, you could get help others to do charity. You need to do these social networks out of common interest, out of living amongst men. Like, we need to get that sense of community back, right? Like, some people be like, oh, I want my community. Like, well, are you inviting people to a barbecue? Like, are you inviting them to your home? Like, are you, I don't know, spending time with them? Like, everything, you don't need to everything to be like this work thing where you're basically work, work, work. Like, work is cool, but you need your community too. Like, they are gonna support you when things go down south. So I think that this is a great way to promote that. I have been doing that with my friends. Like, we're going out, playing dominoes, drinking some beers from time to time,
Absolute individualism and hedonism, the Anglo way.
Exactly. And I don't reiterate here that what I'm saying, like all these things that I'm proposing, exactly as Chicho said, they wouldn't be really classified as individualism. They would be more classified as the individual being empowered to create his own community. So it's a little bit, it's a very good mixture of being an individual, but also being part of a collective, which is kind of what we are in a way, because, all of us have been drawn here because of Noel, and we might not necessarily share all of his opinions, but we still form part of a collective that Noel has created. So we're a collective, but we're still individuals within the collective, and we help each other out. Checho, I don't know if you want to talk about what true. Happened. I don't know if you want to talk about what happened today, and which was a very good example of helping out others and building community.
And listen,
or maybe you might. Sorry, hold up. You might think maybe it's a little more too personal to talk about, or do you think it's fine?
Oh, well, I'm gonna share with you my Twitter account. So yeah, we're gonna talk about, like, there's a thing, like, my little brother. Well, he's not that little. He's 16 and he's 5'10", right? Like, he's a very big guy. But yeah, he plays soccer, right? And he went down. He transported himself in a bike, and he had a problem because his cell phone basically got, it was raining, and his cell phone got basically a lot ton of warning, and it started to fail, and it is not working anymore. So I started basically ¿cómo se dice rifa en inglés, Klaus?
A raffle.
Yeah,
Raffle.
I started a raffle on Twitter, and a ton of people have shared, a ton of people have donated money, and I am very thankful that I hope. Well, there are not that many. Well, there's it's been so a ton of them are being sold out, but there I am still waiting for more to buy him a new cell phone. Like it is a surprise for him because well, like my mom basically told me like you gotta work to get that phone back, like you gotta get your stuff together. And he's basically so in trouble with classes because you know that everything now is online, and you need to be on the WhatsApp groups, you need to look at the classes, and I have been basically borrowing my cell phone for him to see at his classes. So basically there are times where I am not I am on my computer. So yeah, I'm trying. Like a ton of people have shared, various peoples have donated, and it's a very good way to. First of all, I am thankful with Klaus for helping me and for sharing, and I am thankful with everyone because it is a great way to contribute to a community and to contribute to your fellow man.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I
Sorry.
wanna add on to that. This charity that you guys are promoting, this productive, this positive way of using social media to advance our culture, but also to help people is very beautiful. This isn't a conversation that we could have had like between different Hispanic nationalities and backgrounds. This isn't a conversation that we could have had live maybe even 10 years ago. So yeah, like humans are tribal, but at the same time, I think that the positive use of technology, the positive use of social media, we get a window into each other's world, and we're kind of like forced to examine ourselves and to coexist. So I think that I don't think that, yeah, there's tribalism, but at the same time, it's very hard to not look at your fellow man, and in if I'm Dominican in Colombia, not empathize. I mean, I would have to be like a sociopath or something.
I get what you mean. I mean, there's been some homies on the Discord when I've been talking about that type of thing, and they were kind of like, I don't know if I want to help Colombians first. I want to help all my people first, and I totally understand that. I have nothing against that, uh, and I totally see where they're coming from. So that's why I say, as the saying goes, charity begins at home. So obviously you want to take care of yourself first, self charity, self care, don't smoke, don't drink, don't eat bad food type of thing. So fix yourself first, and then the closest around you, your loved ones, family, if you have a loved one who has a drug problem, yeah, it's very good that you're doing charity outside, but it's also there's something more important in your very personal life. Help out someone who has a drug issue,
No,
and then
absolutely.
from
I think it's less of a thing of like just pure tribalism, more of a thing that I think you and me agree that charity should be something voluntary. Nobody should be like forced into it. Otherwise, it's not something that's valid if it's not voluntary because it's not coming from a genuine place.
exactly, you know what I called forced charity? It's called taxation. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Niva got it right.
But I'm talking about from like a human, like religious,
No,
moral
you know,
standpoint.
it is very interesting because you can see that in traditional societies like in Catholic and Orthodox communities, like even the church, they would not look at your properties in order to tax you or to ask for the 10%, right? To tithe, to tithe. I don't know how to pronounce it. To give the 10%. So like it would be out of your own conscience to to pay for the 10%. Like if you had a million and you wanted to pay 10,000, then it will be out of your conscience. Like it will be between you and God, but you could basically give whatever you want. And the state, he looks up for your property, how much you win, how much you make, and then he blam take it out of you.
Yeah, it was a very productive and educational conversation. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. But I have to go because I have things to do. And those people that told you that, like, oh, we have to just focus, that's kind of like they're pretty much, there are people that are just assholes and are greedy. It just comes down to that too close.
Well, I always like to give people the benefit of the doubt, and they did posit an argument that even I would agree with, right? I can understand their point of view, but yeah, I mean, maybe I don't know. Sometimes some of the homies on the Twitter, on the Discord, on the Telegram, they talk the talk, but they may not necessarily walk the walk. But again, everyone's on a learning sort of trajectory, so it's always good to have these conversations and all that. So yeah, if so, have a good one, homie. If you're gonna leave now, and take care, and thank you very much for coming in, man. I really
Yeah,
appreciated your takes.
later. Take it easy.
Thank you.
Te lo bendiga, se cuida. So here's another project. This comes from Nana La Negra, and it says, "I have 70 children who need a sponsor. You can help them to have a life project." And here it talks about this kid called Matias David, and here it says he has 8 and wants to be a constructor and mechanic. If you could hashtag sponsor a future, helping accomplish his dreams, 50,000 pesos a month, which is literally like $15 a month. Like, it's not even much. And then it gives you like information on how to donate.
Can
and
you
that type of thing.
drop that in the private chat for me, please?
Sure.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Now then again, these are, you might require to have like a Colombian bank account or be able to have a way to donate like internationally. I've been able to send money internationally through, as I said, to Zoom from my American bank account to my Colombian bank account. So you would have to get in contact with them to sort of sort that out. I wouldn't know how to.
I was going to say perhaps Western Union would work, right?
They might accept it. You'd have to. And also always make sure you let them know like who sent you, because sometimes they might be like, wait, I don't know you. So with this particular one, you'd have to tell them that Mr. Pollo sent you, and if Mr. Pollo says I didn't really send him, you can be like, well, actually Klaus referred me to him, which then referred me to you. And if you want to contact Mr. Pollo directly, I'm gonna hold up.
Copy.
Yeah, if you want to contact him directly, I'm going to shout out his Twitter out here. That's his Twitter account.
Thank you.
Just make sure you let him know that I sent you, because, again, he might be like, wait, who are you? You don't follow me on Twitter? Like, what's going on? Know what I mean? And obviously, he only speaks Spanish, so,
Gotta follow Klaus on Twitter. All my homies follow Klaus on Twitter, bro.
And follow Klaus on Twitter, man. Like, I got some popping takes. Like, right now, starting from tomorrow, I'm gonna go on a 2-week Twitter break because, man, just these exams, man. And I've been neglecting my studies, so I have to get back to what's important to me right now. So, but and again, it doesn't have to be him specifically, and that's why I have to make a video on decentralized charity and community building, because that is a big one. Again, I'm always about the actionable stuff, what you can actually do in real life. So, again,
I remember for me growing up, one of the unifying forces for me was baseball. I was on a summer team. I was like really young, maybe it was Super Little League. I think it was, because I was like 13, and one of the unifying forces for me was baseball, in the sense that I came into a Dominican team for just the summer, and then obviously I was going to go back home, and we had it was a team from kids from all over, not only the DR, but there was kids from Aruba, Curacao, one kid from Venezuela, Haiti, Dominican Republic. And when it came already to the end of the season, what I just decided to do was just give away all my equipment to each of the kids, and uh, we were all just, from different parts of the region. It just it was just something that if I wasn't playing with them, if I wouldn't know who they are, I would just look at them as this group of kids. But I was a part of that team, and I was taught things that obviously I took back with me, and that was sports for me. It was like the unifier for what I did at the time. I bought a whole bunch of baseball gloves and just gave it away to everyone and all my equipment. I just couldn't leave without doing that because it was, to see a kid. So I grew up playing baseball, but to see a kid who he uses a milk carton as a glove, and he is perhaps more skilled than me. It just made my my summer just to give him an actual Wilson glove, and to the other members of the team that I did. And I hope they're all doing well, but I got to look up if any of them became professional baseball players, because it is the Dominican Republic. But that selfless sense of whether it's charity, whether it's like you're really young and you give your kid, you give a kid a last piece of your empanada because he haven't ate, to now being an adult and helping someone get materials for school. It's it means a lot to give in that sense. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is, man. That's Christ-like. That's what we are called to do as Christians, to help out our fellow man and to be good and righteous.
Right. One of the stories that I'll never forget is that I think it was like the last parents' weekend in college, and I had like these 5-star notebooks, and like it was nearly all entirely empty, and my dad was like in my apartment, and he was shuffling through my notes, see if I actually do write anything in school. I'm like, he goes through and he's like, when I was growing up, they would call like el liceo, la secundaria. My notebook was half a notebook, and to sharpen a pencil, I'd have to look for a knife, and to not even that, but it was moreover even in the cases, not when he was frustrated with me, he'll simply take me to the bathroom and turn on the hot and the cold water. And I was like, what's the lesson here? Well, the lesson is that he turned the hot water off and said I only had that water. And things like that just made me really just conscious about paying it forward to others who are less fortunate than me, because just one generation ago I had a parent who I just can't imagine growing up in a similar situation.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's exactly. You kind of always have to remember where you came from, where your parents came from, and kind of pay it forward, because at least in my personal experience, I've been very blessed and privileged to have the parents that I do have. I guess I would specifically talk about my father. He's sacrificed so much and done so much for me and my sister that it's quite likely that I'll never be able to pay him back, either financially or spiritually or in what type of way. So the only thing that I can do, apart from obviously helping him when he gets older, is to pay that forward, with my future children, with my community. That's really the only thing you can ever really do to truly honor your parents, because again, one of the commandments is honor thy father and thy mother. And I'm no theologian, so Checha, correct me if I'm wrong. You can always fact check.
Oh, bro, don't worry. I am not a theologian too.
But I can consider you a lay theologian. You're the Christian fact checker out here. And certainly a way to honor your parents would be to just live a very Christ-like life and dedicate your life to helping out your community and your family, just
Well,
being an all-around good
yeah.
Christian.
Yeah, and there's a part to it where we are never alone, right? Like we are always, even when you are quote unquote alone, you are always with angels, demons, and you are with the Holy Trinity, right? So your behavior is always gonna be not only watched by yourself and your own conscience, but by other beings. And I think that one part that needs to be to talk about is the that your father is an icon, an image of God the Father in your household, and your mother is an icon, an image of the blessed Virgin Mary. So in that sense, you need to remember that as you pray towards God, as you venerate the always Virgin Mary, you need to respect your fathers, to help them. You need to help them as they get old, because in the as you God looks at it, and if you were well educated and you educate well your kids and God helps that too, they're gonna respect you and they're gonna be helped too. So yeah, and I think that it's a good way to show to others and to truly wholeheartedly help others in your community, because as we are saying, right, like this atomization, this extreme individualism, like even liberalism was meant to get men into associations, as Alexis de Tocqueville said in Democracy in America. Like even in liberalism, you see associations of men towards common goals, like an association for charity, an association of workers. Like you see all these associations that the natural habit of humans is in sociability, is in groups. So yeah, and I think that it is a great way to show others, to help others, and to help kids, because a ton of kids are growing up without their father, and if you help them in a Christ-like way to know how to work, to know how to help others, to take care of themselves, to take care of their household, like you are gonna teach them how to be men, and that is gonna be like your own ministry towards God and towards the church. That they are gonna be so thankful to you because you taught them basically how to take care of themselves, and to not just be a deadbeat or a laid back type of guy. Like that they will take responsibility, and with the help of God, like that they will guide their own households, and that they will work together and associate, and they will basically overcome, I don't know, poverty, bad illness, and all of these uh, troubles that they will get in life.
Well said.
Amen.
Nice.
Well, guys, I am gonna head
Yeah.
out. Like I need to study John Stuart Mill, and gotta study labor law. I know I am not that fond of labor law. I am on that side with the with the libertarians. Yeah, yeah. I gotta study. So I hope may God bless you. It was a very good conversation. I hope you're all good. And guys, see you in the next video.
Yeah. And Checho, please reach out to me so we can have a discussion just offline. I know we've both been very busy, but yeah, I've been meaning to reach out to you. I just, yeah, completely left my mind.
Don't worry, my guy. We have time for that. No, no, no estoy casado. No, I am not married. I am on my way though.
Like every
Yeah,
good
be
costeño,
fruitful and multiply.
he's got hoes in different area codes.
No,
Nah, man.
no, not gonna make any commentary on that. Nor affirmative nor negative.
He's gonna plead the fifth on that one. That's good, man.
So
Well.
there's some law for you.
Yeah. I think we can end it here, guys. I think it's been a very productive stream, and I don't think I have anything else to say. Obviously, Checho's gonna go now. Henry, do you have anything else to say? Any closing comments?
No closing comments, but this was a productive stream for thank you to all of those that Checho, Corky, obviously Klaus and those others that were in the comments, and those that were those that will listen to this in the future, this episode. Just thank you for listening.
All right, thank you very much, guys. And thank you for
Hit
tuning
the
in.
like, hit the subscribe, and ring the bell. To the next
And obviously, follow me on the Twitters, man. It's just like my name out here, Klaus Von Reck. You already know where to find me, man. And you know, I'm not gonna be posting for 2 weeks, but when I'm back, I'm gonna be stronger than ever. And with the hot takes, with the charity, with all the good stuff, all positivity. Stay positive, stay Christ-like. Thank you very much for tuning in, and take care. Peace.